Hi, my name is Dr. Felicia, and I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling. And in today's video, I'm going to be following up from a prior video I did about how to trust your gut. That was part one of the series, and now this is going to be the next part. And so I'm going to be covering how you can learn to trust your gut and your intuition again after you've been through abuse. Although I cover spiritual abuse a lot on this channel, these principles also apply to any sort of emotional abuse, whether it's narcissistic abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, any of those types of abusive behaviors that you've been subject to can result in you having difficulty in trusting your gut and your intuition. So I'm going to follow up with the first video. If you haven't already, I strongly urge you to watch the first video. And in that video, I talk about how when we dismiss our gut or our intuition, we usually do so because we have some sort of like core belief about ourselves. And so in that video, I encourage you to examine what that core belief is. And that core belief can come from a lot of things, but for a lot of people, it has to do with, I would say something related to their character, some sort of like character deficit or excess. Okay, so go back and watch that video. And in this video, I'm going to follow up with that. And so let's say, you've identified some sort of belief that you have about yourself as a result of the abuse. And it might be something that you've been told by the abuser or the abusive system. In this case, I'm going to use the example of somebody who's been classified as too sensitive, okay? So if we apply the principles from the first video, if you believe that you are too sensitive, then you're going to not believe what your intuition or your gut tells you, right? And so in this video, I'm going to discuss, well, how do you actually deal with that belief, right? And the first thing I want you to think of is that just because you are too, I'm going to use the case of being too sensitive again, but let's say that you believe that you are too sensitive. What usually follows up with that is believing that your capacity to assess things is somehow flawed, right? So the belief in this case would be, because I'm too sensitive, that my ability to discern and listen to my gut is questionable, right? And so that's what a lot of people actually have been told while, as a result of their abuse is, well, you're just too sensitive. And then people will use that to dismiss the person or to judge them. And so in this case, you have to be able to identify what that core message is and what it's doing to you. In this case, because you believe you're too sensitive, if something comes up in your gut or you see something with your intuition, of course you're going to dismiss it because you look at that as like maybe like a false flag or like a false alarm or something like that, right? Think about a security system that is too sensitive. It's going to pick up things that are not real threats. Okay, so you've probably been told that, especially if you've been labeled too sensitive. And if you think about it, people who have been through abuse and people who are rather sensitive may pick up on things that are false alarms, but that doesn't mean that you dismiss your intuition, right? I don't think that anybody has a perfect level of sensitivity. There are people that are more sensitive than others, maybe the majority of other people, and then there are people who are also going to be less sensitive. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't listen to your gut, right? And so something that I would like for you to do is, once you've identified that, identify how you personally respond to that idea that you are too sensitive. It may cause you to dismiss things that are important. It might cause you to engage in a lot of criticism of yourself, and trying to kind of like ignore that trait. If you are truly, I don't think that there is necessarily something known as too sensitive. I think that some people who are more sensitive than other people have benefits to that way of relating to the world, and there are also maybe things you need to look out for. So that being said, think about a time in your life where you either dismiss your own intuition or you allowed yourself to be, you allowed yourself to like question your own sensitivity because of what somebody else said. So take a minute to think about that. If you have a journal, it would be really helpful too to write that in your journal, or you can even type it in your phone. So once you've done that, think about that situation and think about how it turned out. What thing would you have liked to pay attention to, or what thing would you have listened to based on your gut? So think about that. And then I also want to explain too, when I talk about gut and intuition, what that is. It's something that bypasses our intellect and our cognitive reasoning, right? And so, people often talk about being in a situation where their hair stood on end, right? Or they felt goosebumps, or they just felt that something was not right, although they could not put a finger on what it was, right? And that's how our intuition or our gut works. It's not something that you can necessarily put into words all the time, or something that you can clearly explain in a way that makes logical sense. And so when you continually dismiss that, then it becomes even harder for you to listen to it. And so something that I would encourage you to do is think about what your gut is telling you throughout the day, right? Or throughout a period of a week. And what you want to do is you want to pay attention to it, and you want to keep that as a data point. There's some people that use intuition as a way of making some decisions that probably aren't the best for them or aren't rational. But I would strongly argue that our intuition and our gut is an important data point, and it speaks to us in different ways from the maybe our brain would, right? So our brain or our intellect could look at a situation and say, I don't see anything wrong or out of place here, but your gut is screaming at you to leave. And usually our gut speaks in more primal ways, not a lot of words. It's more of, there's a YouTuber, Cassandra Mack, who explains this very well, but she says that it's almost like a traffic light system, right? Like you might get a red light meaning, oh my goodness, stop, or a green light saying, get out of here, go, go, go. And so that's how our intuition communicates to us, our gut. And it might tell us, hey, file this away and keep this as something to watch out for. It's not going to tell us in that, way, but that might be the yellow light. Hey, pause, look around, take into inventory what you see, hear, and feel. And so that's, when people have been through psychological abuse, they often feel like that part of them is wrong, and they work actively to suppress it and to dismiss it. So I want you to try and get out of that space. Number one, listen to it. And use it as a data point, right? Sometimes it may not be something you need to act on right away, but it's something to file away and say, I need to be careful around this person, or, I didn't feel comfortable in that particular situation. Whatever it is it's telling you, journal about that. And then you also, again, want to remember that just because you are labeled as too sensitive does not necessarily mean that your ability to listen and trust your gut and intuition is flawed. Those two things operate on separate dimensions. It's really important that you understand that. Now, some people might say, well, how do I know? Am I just trying to make myself better? And to that, I would respond, look, we're never 100% certain about anything, right? But let's say that if you take that belief that you have about yourself, that I'm too sensitive and therefore I cannot trust my gut or my intuition, you are basically shutting down an entire system that is meant to keep you safe. And so by doing that, or by continually dismissing it and ignoring it, what you're saying in essence is that guts and intuition only work for certain types of people, and you're not that, and you are not that person for whatever reason. Maybe it's being too sensitive or too critical or not joyful enough, whatever it is, whatever the abusive environment has thrown your way. You really need to be able to take that and manage a certain level of uncertainty and say, even if that's the case, even if I am too sensitive or I am too critical, I can and will listen to my gut, right? And so I want you to say that to yourself. And I also want you to write that down. I want you to think about a situation where, well, actually, no, we already talked about the other situations. What I want you to do going forward is to practice, right? Any sense that we practice listening to will get stronger. And so that's what I want you to do. Now, some people might think, well, what if my gut is wrong? A lot of times when people say that, they don't really understand like what intuition is. So I remember having a conversation with someone about this, and they said, well, well, my gut might be telling me that I need to sleep in and miss my appointment. And that's not your gut. That might be your body telling you, you're tired, or it may just be you not wanting to go to something that's unpleasant. And that is not your gut. Again, your gut works in a more primal way. And it's more about strong feelings and strong signals versus, oh, you should do this because you're tired or whatever. And so it's it's not something that I can explain fully. It's just something that you have to learn to trust. And as you're doing this, think about other times when you have listened to your gut and it was correct, right? Listening to your gut doesn't mean you just do whatever it says, but it also means that you do not dismiss it, that you keep it in the back of your mind, you write it down and use it as a data point. Okay. So, I hope this information helped you. And if it did, please like the video, comment, share, and subscribe. And I'd also like to hear from you all in the comments. One thing I really love about this growing community is that people are very open about sharing things that have worked for them. So if you are in the process of this, you're going through the process of learning to trust your gut again, share with other people what has worked for you. And I'd really love to hear from you, especially if you've been categorized or you've internalized this core belief about some kind of character deficit on your part, whether it's being too this or not enough of this. Talk about how you've gone through that and how you've managed to learn to trust your gut again through that entire process. Okay. So if you'd like to book a free consultation with me, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, or click on the link in the description box and you can schedule a free consultation to talk about this more and figure out what kind of strategies, personalized strategies that we can work together with in therapy. All right. So I hope you have a wonderful day that's filled with peace. Bye-bye.